The good news is that the most powerful biohacks are free. And in biohacking, the definition, and I thought really hard about this, it's the art and science of changing the environment around you and inside you so you have control. So first, what are the goals if you're a mom with 4 kids? I have 2 kids, and I know the goal is always, I just want to have enough energy.
I try to fail every day. When I talk to my daughter at night, when we go to bed, when she goes to bed, she's 8 years old, I tell her how daddy failed that day and how daddy succeeded. And I ask her how will she fail and how did she fail that day. So she gets used to understanding that failure is a part of the process and that it comes along with successes.
Today, we're bringing you a conversation straight from the Lake Nona Impact Forum at the KPMG Lake House Learning and Innovation Center in Orlando's Lake Nona community, a place where the brightest minds come together to shape the future of health, wellness, and medical innovation.
Welcome to My Legacy. Today we're joined by 2 groundbreaking entrepreneurs who have reshaped industries in completely different ways. Daymond John turned $40 into FUBU, a $6 billion fashion empire, and has helped countless entrepreneurs find their footing as an investor on Shark Tank. Dave Asprey is known as the father of biohacking. He turned a simple blog into a $1 billion series of businesses. Bulletproof Coffee, Upgrade Labs, the list goes on. With 4 New York Times best-selling books, he's inspired millions who have followed his journey spanning more than a decade as he explores new ways to enhance health and longevity. Together, these close friends share a deep personal passion for innovation, self-improvement, and pushing boundaries in both entrepreneurship and human performance. Welcome, Dave and Daymond.
Thank you for having me.
Super happy to be here.
We're very grateful. We're excited to be with icons who have shaped America and the world in such interesting ways.
Absolutely. And I'm going to start with you, Daymond, because I'm of a certain age that, there was a certain part of, growing up in the 90s that there was not one black person that did not have a FUBU something in their closet.
Yeah, that was great.
And so you've always, what you have done and inspired me your entire career. If you can take us back a little bit to when you first got started, is there anyone in particular who really, really influenced you?
Yeah, so many people influenced me, but of course, my mother influenced me, and then my stepfather, or I call my stepfather, his I was telling people earlier today, his brother was the lead attorney fighting over here for Mandela's release, and he happened to be Jewish, as I shared with you, and he was impactful in so many ways because he always told me, be pro-black, but never anti-anything else, and never become the thing you're fighting against. And I think after that, it was the black men in the community also, who were businessmen. And I had 3 mentors, and they had small businesses, but I always say if you're able to keep a business open 20 years, you're dealing with the same things that Jeff Bezos is dealing with. You're dealing with competition, inflation, products, all kinds of new technology. So, my life has been just really a series of mentors.
You know what? My husband almost kicked me when you said never become like that you're fighting against.
Yeah.
Because my co-hosts have heard me say this many times. I monitored hate groups and hate crimes for many years. The Ku Klux Klan, neo-Nazis, skinheads. And on the wall of my office, I had the quote by Bell Hooks. We must never become like that which we're fighting against.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that was my North Star every day when I was going into that basement and in that work.
Wow. All right. Well, then there you have it. I mean, I wish more people would think that way, but we get so caught up with our passion that we don't realize that we're becoming that.
Dave, when you think about the values that shaped you, is there someone in your life, whether family or mentor, who influenced you the most?
It's hard to pick one person. In my mid-20s, I was 300 pounds. My brain was failing. I couldn't remember anything. And I had a job in Silicon Valley as a tech entrepreneur. And I started hanging out with people more than 3 times my age at one of the first longevity nonprofits. And soon they asked me to be president because I was the only guy under 30. And my friend Mike was 88 at the time. And he would call me up at 11:30 at night, just bursting with energy and ideas and enthusiasm like he was in his 20s. And it was my elders who taught me that you could take old people and give them the energy of youth. And since I was young and I had the energy of old age, Their techniques helped me get my brain back, and there would be no biohacking without my elders teaching me. So Mike would be that guy.
Wow. And I'm curious because I'm sure everything that you have on is intentional. So are the glasses for blue light?
The glasses are one of my companies. It's called True Dark, and they're blocking the bad part of blue, and they let the good part of blue through.
Okay.
Because if you wear blue blockers in the morning, you never wake up. But if you have all these bright lights in you all the time, by the end of the day, your brain's kind of cooked.
Beautiful. What about the energy? Is that an energy?
This is a meteorite that fell in New Mexico, where I was born.
Wow.
So I love meteorites. There's some kind of good energy in them.
Beautiful.
And for those who are listening rather than our viewers, I do love how your glasses have that little tint of yellow, and the circular nature encompassing that meteorite is beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Very
Damon,
good, Craig. We're gonna
just making sure our listeners are also following along. I love it. Damon, so many people shared with us how excited they were the opportunity to hear from you, partially because you've inspired so many people who want to follow in your footsteps. Now, one thing I don't know if everyone always realizes was your journey wasn't linear, wasn't always easy. And one thing I love how you've been relating to people by being very open about how when you were younger, you had dyslexia, school was not an easy pathway, it was a bit of an unconventional journey in high school. Can you take us back to that so that people see today this billion-dollar success, but they don't always understand the origin story?
I mean, the origin is, I think it's the American dream. I think that it is, I was less fortunate than many, and I was way more fortunate than most of the people on the planet. I had a house, and I had clean drinking water, right? So, and I had access to food and electricity. But, we only know what we come from. We came from, a place that was riddled, like most of the, American communities, riddled with crack, and most of my friends became drug dealers. I decided that's not a path that I wanted, but I was dyslexic. 8 of the 12 sharks are actually dyslexic. And I had a challenge.
Wow.
Yeah, I had a challenge.
I almost want people to share that on social media for any of the families.
Well, that's
out
why
there.
you said,
I love it.
Richard
Thank
Branson's dyslexic, Barbara's
Yeah.
dyslexic, Kevin's dyslexic. I believe Rohan's dyslexic, and because I'm dyslexic, I've got the other 3. So, so I didn't do well in school. Like, I left back in the 7th grade. I didn't go to college, but I applied myself and started working. But I did realize I was hanging out as well because I grew up in Hollis, Queens, and almost majority of, at that time, a lot of the famous rappers came from there. Local J, Salt and Pepper, Tribe Called Quest, and all that. I was on all these big tours since I was 14 years old. I became too cool for school. But then I turned around and I was laughing at the kids who were going to college in school. I laughed at all the band geeks, as they call it, and the nerds. Well, those band geeks became people like Dr. Dre and Timbaland, right, and Pharrell, and the nerds became Zuckerberg and Bezos. I remember I was working at Red Lobster right around 21 years old, and all those kids I was laughing at. Not that I knew Zuckerberg and those people, I'm using an example. I remember all those kids that I laughed at that were going to college, investing in their future. Well, they were coming back now, and I was in Red Lobster serving them shrimp. And I was like, well, I'm the idiot. And I started to double down and try to, get any form of education I could. And being dyslexic was challenging, but I would read a book a week. I would find mentors. I would go and apply and do a lot of different things. I was reading the sales sheets at Red Lobster, finding out how this large corporation was making money. Well, they needed help back a year ago, but they were making money back then. And then I started to invest in things I love to do, which was this fashion. And I used what I call the power of broke. I realized that, 65% of a lot of winners and athletes are broke 3 years after leaving the league because they don't know how to use the tool of money. And another 60 or 70% of Forbes' wealthiest 1,000 people are self-made men and women. That's like the men and women in this room and listening to this podcast. So obviously, money is just a tool. And I started to use what was around me as normal entrepreneurs. Well, I knew rappers. Why don't you wear that? Well, I knew this. Why don't you do that? And it slowly grew. I had a lot of challenges. I started FUBU in '89. I closed it 3 times from '89 to '92 because I ran out of money. I found my beautiful 3 partners who believed in me after that. Now, there were 10 people who believed in me, but most of them didn't stay around. It was those 3 that believed in me. And then by 1998, I was doing $350 million a year. Now, that's a long story. I started in '89. In 1998, I started to get public recognition after failing 3 times. But that's the American dream. That's why when we look at people like me and all of us on Shark Tank, we all went through that process.
Have you failed since then?
I try to fail every day. When I talk to my daughter at night, when we go to bed, when she goes to bed, she's 8 years old, I tell her how Daddy failed that day and how Daddy succeeded. And I ask her how will she fail and how did she fail that day. They may be, I planned on doing this and I didn't get to this and I was late for a meeting, and you should never be late, because when you're late, you make the other person feel like they're not of value. And whatever the case is, so she gets used to understanding that failure is a part of the process and that it comes along with successes.
The fact you do that with your daughter, I didn't know that about you. I've done that with my kids, where every night when they were little, I would say, tell me 3 things you're grateful for and tell me 1 failure you had. And I would celebrate the failure more than the things they're grateful for. So they would look at it that way. And so few parents know this. Wow.
What we do in our home are the roses and thorns.
Oh.
So so what was your rose for today and what was your thorn? Now our daughter is 16 years old, so she journals every night. We still have family dinners when we're together. And I just bought her this new journal where in the morning, you talk about kind of your intentions for the day, what you're grateful for. And at night before you go to bed, you do what would you change? Like what would you do things just a little bit different or better? It's a way of looking the same way at your failures or what you would do differently for your day every night before you go to bed.
Yeah, self-reflection is extremely important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Daymond, you've seen hundreds of entrepreneurs on Shark Tank make presentations. So what is a surefire way to lose a deal on Shark Tank?
Ooh.
Well, to lose a deal anywhere is to not understand who you're talking to and not to understand what's in it for them. They say don't tell anybody your problems, 20% don't care, and the other 80% are really happy you have them. And so when you tell somebody your problems, then they don't care. What's in it for the person on the other side? But if you're talking about Shark Tank, you have to do your homework on the target. A lot of people pitch me clothing brands on Shark Tank. The main reason I got on Shark Tank is because I had 10 clothing brands in '07. Nobody's buying clothes when they can't pay their rent. So I wanted to diversify my portfolio, because out of my 10 clothing brands, 8 of them were dead. The last thing I want is clothing. You didn't do your homework. Robert has done better in clothing on the show. Well, besides my sock company, Robert has done better in clothing on the show than me. He likes clothing companies. The next thing is to not know your customer. Who is your customer? Is it a person of this gender, primarily this ethnicity, who wants to pay $20 instead of $22? Where do they live? If you don't know who your customer is, I don't know who your customer is, well, then you want to use my money for tuition. And that's not going to work out. And the last one is to think that it's my job. I'm an investor. It's your business. Daymond is not a crutch. I have a day job. And if I wanted to actually put more on my day job plate, well, I would bring FUBU back in a bigger level where I own all of it. The true and the best pitch is you tell somebody a story and qualifies why there was a problem in the market, or you want to bring somebody joy. Because that's the only 2 things that you're going to ever do. You're either going to solve a problem or bring somebody joy. And if you bring somebody joy, you solve the problem, you brought somebody joy. And how that train is going to leave the station no matter what. You want that investor on the train, but it's leaving the station no matter what. And then you qualify why you're the one to do that job. Whenever you have a business, you have to ask yourself 3 questions. Why me, why now, and why this? If you can't answer all 3 of those questions, well, then you're a Me Too product.
Is that something that you knew instinctively, like when you started?
An MBA right there, David.
I know.
That was amazing.
And that's why I'm curious. Is this something that you knew instinctively, or is this also garnered from all of your experience?
Oh, it's by far it's experience. Thank God social media wasn't around up until my 30s, 35, maybe even 40s, because I look back and go, what was wrong with you? Sure, but it's by getting the door slammed in my face so many times and having to go back. Now, we didn't talk about what it takes to get to the pitch. To get to the pitch on Shark Tank or to anybody in this room, you got to kiss a lot of frogs. You can't take it personal. You have to, when you leave a room and, somebody says no, you have to say something like, well, did I study them accurately? Did I ask enough questions? Did I communicate it accurately? You know what? Maybe they had a bad day. Maybe they were arguing with their significant other. Maybe they don't have the vision, and even if they invested or bought it, they weren't the customer I wanted anyway. But you have to then kiss another frog. I got backed by Samsung's textile division. Does anybody know that Samsung had a textile division? I never go to number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 in the market. I go to number 200 who wants to be number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Because 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, they're good.
Wow. And Dave, you totally started an entire industry. Right?
Yeah.
Biohacking did not exist before you came along. And I believe that you actually, did you somehow start, you're the first person to sell on the internet a product? Or
way before I started biohacking. Yeah, the first product ever sold over the internet was a t-shirt that said caffeine, my drug of choice, and it has this molecule. I've got it tattooed on my bicep. And
This is the first product ever sold on the internet?
It was, yeah. Before e-commerce didn't have a name, and there wasn't a web browser yet. So this was before, actually, Marc Andreessen was making the first web browser right when I did this.
That's cool.
So I'm in Entrepreneur Magazine wearing a double extra large shirt. And people say, Dave, you weren't fat. I'm like, well, here's my 23-year-old fat picture in Entrepreneur Magazine. I think that one counts. And at the time, I was just trying to pay for my tuition. Right, I didn't realize that would be anything, and I was on the internet early because I'm a nerd, and I thought, man, I know the people I talk to every day, and they're into coffee, and so am I. So I'm just going to make a product, and I, in fact, one of the article in Entrepreneur Magazine, it said, if you exploit it, it's gone. I said, there's a culture. Don't just put ads up. Be a part of the community and serve your community if you're going to put something up there.
But it was amazing. You created a category. Well, both of you actually created, Daymond created a category and Dave, you created a category, if you actually stop and think about it. And you took MCT oil, coffee. There was a lot of skepticism when biohacking came as an idea.
That was great.
Well, can I ask, what gave you the drive to push through that skepticism to bring it to mainstream?
Well, I was pretty sick when I was young. I had Asperger's syndrome. It's a form of autism. A lot of weird behavioral issues. Fat, had arthritis since I was 14. And when I reversed all that with what is now biohacking, my goal was I want 5 people to read my blog. And if they don't go through the hell I went through, I have done my act of service. I thought about making it a nonprofit. I didn't collect a list. I didn't do anything. I made $250,000 a year. I had stock options at a publicly traded computer security company because I'm a computer hacker. I was a pretty good one back then. So it was that I don't want people to go through what I went through. And then after I recovered, I'm not going to stop. And I realized you can make your brain work better than you ever imagined, and you can reverse your age, and I'm 6% body fat, and I was really obese with a 46-inch waist. And I feel so good. And when my brain works, I'm nice to other people. And you give me MSG and the wrong foods, and I feel like I'm doing exercise with my middle finger muscles. Not like I'm a jerk. Right, so being hypoglycemic was a problem for me. And so I'm like, I just want to teach people, and I write all my stuff. If I was 19 or 20 and I just would have known this, it would have saved me $1 million to recover. And the other $1.5 million was for longevity. I'm happy with that. But the suffering, all the times I was just a jerk to people, it was not because I was a bad person. It was because my hardware wasn't working right. And so every time someone reaches out and says, yeah, I lost the weight, but my brain works so much better. That was the why. And people say, oh, you're wrong. Okay, then don't do it. But look who started drinking this idea of butter in coffee. I didn't invent that. Well, I kind of did in coffee, but I was in Tibet, Mount Kailash, the holiest mountain in the world, had yak butter tea. I'm like, what does this work? Right. So I this whole process, I just wanted to share.
So I was also in Tibet, also had yak butter tea. I didn't have the brilliance and idea of scaling, so I don't want to take away what you did was amazing.
Why were you in Tibet?
Well, after I exhausted all the Western medicine that was supposed to make me well, I made and lost $6 million before I was 28. I tried being rich, didn't make me happy. I tried getting married, that didn't work very well in my 20s, didn't make me happy. And I was in Entrepreneur Magazine when I'm 23. Being famous didn't make me happy. I'm like, I'm miserable. Nothing that's supposed to work works. I'm going to have to try all this stuff that I don't even believe in. So I'll learn meditation from the masters in Tibet. And I've since studied with gurus all over the world. And I would say ancient practices are as much a part of biohacking as the latest gene therapy or the true dark glasses or anything like that. Because end of the day, once your body's working, everybody wants two things. We want to live a very long time, longer than we're supposed to, because life is so precious. And we want to be conscious. We want our brains to work. We want to be happy. So you can start by saying, I don't arthritis in my knees anymore, or I want to fix this one annoying problem. Eventually you're going to say, I'm going to have to work on becoming enlightened, whether I make it or not, and I'm going to have to work on being a good human being. And once you get that, like, man, I don't want to stop. That's why I was there. I wanted to learn from the people who studied it for 5,000 years because they probably knew something I didn't.
So when you first started out, you were like your own guinea pig? You went through that process? And in going through that, what was the craziest thing that you did?
Man, only one? There's a point of desperation. If you're obese and your brain is fogged out and you've tried dieting, I went to the gym 6 days a week, 90 minutes a day without fail for 18 months. At the end of that time, I had not lost 1 pound and I had not lost an inch on my waist. And I thought, maybe I'm eating too much lettuce. It's all that's left. So the exercise didn't work, and I just got really frustrated. So I said, I'm going to try the crazy stuff. One of the things I did that comes to mind, I had the worst digestive problems. You didn't want to be in a room with me after I ate. So I bought this pill from Russia. It was an electrical stimulator pill. And you swallow it, and it shocks your intestines as it goes through you every 5 seconds to make the muscles stronger. Well, it got stuck right here on my leg. And so for about 2 hours, I was kicking. And I'm like, what do? I'm jumping on a trampoline and all. And I do not recommend this as a biohack. That was a pretty crazy one.
One of the things, though, that I often think about is that there's a certain privilege, if you will, to longevity or health. What advice would you give a single parent with 4 children that she wants to be as healthy as she can be and she wants her children healthy, but we all know it's much more expensive to eat at, I'm not going to say the name of places, versus getting a value meal at X place. So what are things that she can incorporate for the health of herself and her children?
The good news is that the most powerful biohacks are free. And in biohacking, the definition, and I thought really hard about this, it's the art and science of changing the environment around you and inside you so you have control. So first, what are the goals if you're a mom with 4 kids? I have 2 kids, and I know the goal is always, I just want to have enough energy, right? And I got to make sure I put food on the table and all these things. So you look at it from that lens, and whether you gain or lose 10 pounds probably isn't your biggest goal. Of course, we all want to lose the weight, but that's not most important. It's like, can I show up right now the way my family needs me? So what are the affordable or free things? One of them is sunlight. Go outside without glasses on for 20 minutes in the morning, and it actually charges your mitochondria, and it sets you up to get better sleep at night. Number 2, turn off the lights at night, get some dimmer switches. So sunlight in the morning and darkness in the evening, and eating dinner a little bit earlier, even if it's not the best dinner. And then you look at, okay, what are the food choices I can make for the same amount of money that are better choices? And as an example, if you learn how to cook, it doesn't have to be fancy French cooking. White rice is really cheap, and it's better for you than French fries. Butter is not more expensive than many other foods on a per calorie basis. It's cheaper than vegetables. So now you're getting good fats instead of some canola oil. And so you didn't spend any more money, but you're more nourished, and your kids are not having these blood sugar swings that makes them into little monsters, right? And they say, how do I get more protein? And I used to say eggs, but man, they've gotten expensive lately. And if you go to a place like a Costco where you get a big old hunk of meat, it still can be $2 a pound. And you say, but that's a lot of work to cook it. It's not. Boil some water, throw the rice in there, chop up the meat, throw the meat in there, and add some spices. It's called soup, and it's highly nutritious, and you can do that for less than you'll spend at Mickey D's.
I love the friendship the two of you have created. And Daymond, what's one thing that Dave has brought into your life that's helped with your own health and well-being?
Well, Dave and I were on a board of a company that was, as we talk about, things that could be affordable, a company was about dental stuff, and I remember I think I was on a call with them or somebody on there where they were like, you just got to floss your teeth or get dental cleaning because you don't realize that plaque goes into your system and that can help cause strokes. Very simple concept, right? Then they started hearing about this stuff about prebiotics and probiotics, your gut. Well, then I heard, you also, no matter how good your gut is, if you're drinking tap water or various other waters with chlorine in it, it kills your gut, so you can't digest the same. Well, is that expensive? No, there's a bunch of springs where you can go with big bottles and put it on there. And I started hearing things that were very, very like, you can start down the path and see if it's for you. And then I think I reached out to Dave and said, hey, I don't know, I think I'll ask him something going to his conference. And he was of such service because he just wants to share the information. And then we started getting to know each other besides sitting across from Zoom on those board seats.
And I'm sure it's impacted too with you have your daughter.
Yeah.
And so to get this information.
My wife has always been in that world, but I just try not to listen to her.
We'll edit that out for our listeners.
I have to listen to her about everything else around the house. At least I go, this is my body. But then all of a sudden I had to go listen to her too because she was right.
I a little thought on that too about our friendship. A mutual friend of ours talks about categories of people.
Oh, yes.
And I read about this in my new book, Heavily Meditated.
Dr. B.
And Dr. B.
Yes.
And category one people are people who are always win-win.
Yep.
Like they're always helping, and they're not going to do a deal where the other person loses.
Yep.
You might win different amounts, and the more consistent you are, you call that a category one. And Daymond is a category one person. He's every time I see you talk about the security guard, everyone, you're, how do I help? How do I help?
Yeah.
I respect that so much, and I want to surround myself with category ones.
Oh, thank you.
We share that friend in common.
So, Daymond, certainly financial literacy is an area where you have a great deal of knowledge. When we think about our children, and you also are involved in helping maybe the world become financially literate, what are some of the things that you would recommend that be done for children to expose them to more financial literacy? I'm aware most or many communities of color are not focusing. There are some, but we got a long way to go. But what do you suggest as some techniques that can be used?
I don't know if that's a setup. I wrote a book called Little Daymond Learns to Earn. Became a New York Times bestseller. It's the only book that teaches financial intelligence for children. The reason I created it is not only just about community of color. Absolutely, community of color have the gap is widened because we don't come from legacy wealth, so we don't have anybody to share with us, historically how to operate money and use money. But it's America, period. We're going off of an 80-year-old school system where we were at war and we were teaching our children to build ships and to be great workers for organizations and corporations, and we haven't changed that. And so financial intelligence, when I advise a lot of the teachers, they don't have financial intelligence. They are absolutely amazing in science and history, and they're saying, we don't know what to do. So I created Little Daymond Learns to Earn for that purpose, because the reality is a lot of the stuff we're talking about here comes from the lack of financial intelligence. You see, if you don't get this and learn what interest is and various other things and credit and all those things at 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, well then at 15, 16 years old, you get marketed by predatory loan people who want to sell you a $700,000 school, education for a career you're not even sure you want to have. 50% of the kids graduating today will retire with a job title that doesn't exist today. It's like telling somebody 20 years ago you're going to be a gamer, a social media expert, a pay-per-click expert, an AI. So now all of a sudden, if you all of a sudden get out of school, you have $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 worth of student debt. Well, it's expensive to eat healthy. Mm-hmm. So now you start eating the cheapest things in this country. What are they made out of? The cheapest things in this country are made out of butter, sugar, and salt, right? So you consume more bad things. So understanding financial intelligence at a young age is extremely important. You know how I knew it? My mother was cruel. She did so many tricks on me. She would sit there and do big puzzles with me, 1,000-piece puzzles. And I said to her about 10 years ago, Ma, let's do a puzzle. She said, why do I want to do a puzzle? I said, we used to want to do them when we were kids. She was like, I hated puzzles. I said, what do you mean you hated puzzles? Yeah, but Daymond, if you were sitting there for 3 hours, you let down your guard, and she would say, I would go, oh, where's Alfred at? He's not in school anymore. Alfred brought a new car. Alfred brought a new car. Is that right? And so she would pull information out of me. When she had to go to work, she said, Daymond, I got to cook food for 3 days because I'm going to go to all these jobs. Do me a favor, stand on this little cabinet on this thing right here while I wash the dishes and cook, and read me the Wall Street Journal. I don't have time to read it. And she would have me she was a cruel woman. But
That's what I call ninja parenting.
I learned financial intelligence, through those things. When she said the meat in our neighborhood is always going to be the worst meat ever. Just drive to that neighborhood over there, and you're going to get better meat at a better quality for a lower price. These are the things that she taught me.
And now, Dave, I know that you have faced some controversy and criticism, right? Particularly like during the pandemic and the stance on vaccines, and when we were talking earlier about the privilege of health, and you gave some very tangible ways in which we all can have access to it. How do you kind of reconcile the vulnerable communities, particularly Black and Brown communities?
Well, I did not have the privilege of health as a kid. I was antibiotics every month for 15 years. I was pretty sick. And so when I regained my health, I'm like, this is powerful. And the whole idea of biohacking, we change our environment so we become healthier. It's not about going out and spending a bunch of money. It's about no one gave us the manual for the body. And if you just know what to do, you can have leverage. And one thing I've done a couple of shows on this, I've mentioned on shows, that it just makes me angry. So vitamin D is a longevity supplement. It's $5 a month. It's a very, very cheap drug.
And very critical, particularly for Black children.
Well, there you go.
We're more deficient traditionally.
Not just for Black children, for Black parents.
Yeah.
These good parents, they take their kids to the hospital because they're crying. And then the hospital says, well, there's 5 broken bones. Which of you beat the child? And the kids, well, this is our child. We love our child. We didn't beat him. And they say, well, we're gonna take the child to CPS unless one of you confesses. So then the guys confess and they go to jail. And Dr. Cannell from the Vitamin D Research Institute has testified dozens of times to help get Black men out of jail for a nutrient deficiency that has nothing to do with abuse. And the more we're indoors, the less sunshine we get. I have very pale skin. I don't get enough sunshine. If my skin was darker, I would need even a bigger dose, right? So teaching that this very cheap supplement makes for better brains, less risk of diabetes, cancer, all the bad stuff, and that the darker your skin and the more north you live and the more you're indoors, the more you need.
Yeah.
This is cheaper than one meal at McDonald's. And just the knowledge is so critical. It's just tell me what to do with very little money or no money to get results.
You should have D and K together, correct?
You should have D. You have to have vitamin K.
Yeah.
Because vitamin K stops the tissues from getting all crusty as you age.
Okay, so Daymond, you created Black Entrepreneurs Day to support up-and-coming founders. Who was one of your biggest mentors, and what was the best piece of advice they gave you for business and for life?
It'll be hard, but, I think that a person named Jay Abraham, great mentor, and Dave knows him, I think that he had said to me one day, and I talked about it several times, he said, you never arrive. Every problem that you solve, you create another problem. And that became very powerful. If I become an empty nester, I've solved the problem, right? Hopefully my daughter is off living a beautiful life. Well, now I have to rekindle that relationship with my wife. All right? And once I solve that problem, well, how do I rekindle it? Where do we go and what do we start to do? Now that I solve that problem, how do we do that more? When you understand that, so whether I solve the problem of losing weight or just having more energy, how do I either lose more or gain more muscle? Maybe visually I'm losing weight from the outside, but how do I kill visceral fat on the inside? And when you go to, even in love, right? If you fall in love, how can you be of more value to your spouse, your children, your family, your God? So I think that was probably the best advice ever because, growing up you think, I make money, I'm gonna be rich, I'm done. I get a college degree, I'm guaranteed a job. I get married, it's guaranteed to be happily ever after. No, you have to work at it. You have to work at every single thing. And when you stop working, well, what's the reason to live at the end of the day? I think that's what drives me, that one statement.
One of the things that I hold on to is that life is about continual expansion and fuller expression.
Yeah.
That's what we're here to do, to continue to expand and express ourselves more and more fully.
To both of you, it's been fantastic hearing the conversation, the friendship that you have for each other, the mutual admiration as you talk about health and well-being and innovation and getting an MBA sitting next to you. I love it. We always invite our listeners and viewers to take this wisdom on how they can live a life of fulfillment and impact. I just want to underscore a few of the things you said. One, it's not actually anything you said, but just together as friends. I love that you are both titans in your own area and you created this friendship to learn from each other. It's actually remarkable. And as a guy, frankly, there aren't those friendships that you see in that way, and especially leaders. I admire it. Number two, how health is accessible to us. Sunlight, the food we eat, the sleep. It's not only the elaborate things, but it's the simple things that have such an impact. And so how our listeners can share that wisdom in their life. And number three, fail. Fail every day. Be proud of the failures. Both of you wouldn't be where you are without those failures. And asking your kids, how do they fail today? And therefore, what are they learning today? Love it. And so we are deeply grateful to both of you for joining us at the Lake Nona Impact Forum on the KPMG Lake House campus, Orlando, in the Lake Nona community. And we're especially grateful to both of you for living your legacies every day.
And Craig, one thing too that I want to add is that it's interesting. We have a +1, we have all of these wonderful conversations that we're having, and they're taking so many different forms. And I, like you, I love when you have two men because we don't see that quite enough, I think. But this also, not that either one of you lead with this, but I think it's important, particularly in this day and age, to elevate it. This is our first conversation with a black man and a white man. And I want to highlight that particularly, and it's sad that we're at a time that we still have to highlight it, but I think it is important to highlight that as well.
Thank you all so very much.
Thank you for joining us. If you enjoyed today's conversation, subscribe, share, and follow us at My Legacy Movement on social media. New episodes drop every Tuesday. Listen on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, may you find inspiration to live your legacy.